The difference between English and French. This will be the topic of this video today. If you're discovering this channel, my name is Chris. I'm a French teacher. We communicate. We specialize in teaching adult learners of 40 plus years and native speakers of English only. And yes, you do have to be 40 plus to qualify. And yes, I do ask you for your ID before you start. We use traditional methods only, the kind of which have been proven to work throughout history. One of them being a pen. I'm sure I have a pen here somewhere. This is a pen, so we use one of these. And the other one, oh yeah, paper. This is the second thing we use. So we use pen and paper, and well, we're actually so old school. Listen to this. We're actually so old school that we use Skype for our lessons. I mean, how cool is that? You can't beat that. We actually do use Skype for our lessons. Well, what's even cooler is that I can actually produce a 40 plus learner of French on video who actually speaks French really well. And you can head off to wecommunicate.com to see proof of that. So that's how cool Skype, pen and paper is. Traditional methods that really work for 40 plus learners of French. Robots do indeed not place a language in our heads. Until then, we'll believe it, but we'll soon discover in 5 to 10 years that robots can't do that, whether they're called artificial intelligence or not. We oldies have no need to discover this, which is really cool also. We just know it. Luckily for us, we just know it. We don't need to be proven this. And I think we should celebrate this. So, yeah, high five, pat on the back. Don't hurt yourself because you might have a... Don't hit too hard. But pat on the back, high five to all you 40 plus learners of French. Bravo to you. My condolences to any AI generation learner. Before we start... I'd like to. What does he? Hurry up! Damn it! Get to the point. That's the whole point. I'm not going to hurry up. Go and if you go and have a TikTok, go and have a 3-second attention span, or what's it called? Go and have a Twitter. Have a Twitter or something, a twatter, or go and have an argument with someone on Twitter. If you're in a hurry, go and I'll politely ask you, kindly ask you to go and be in a hurry somewhere else. I'm going to take my time about it. That's what's really cool about being 40 plus. You can just move in slow motion, annoying everyone. Right, I want to thank everyone who signed up in December for French lessons, and I have a list here. I'd like to thank you all personally. I'm talking about Pamela, thank you, hello, thank you very much. I'm talking about Thurl, thanks a lot Thurl, and hello to Jim. Ed, hello Ed, thank you very much. Michael will officially be starting in January, but you've already signed up. Lewis, how are things in Thailand? Hello Lewis, or should I call you either? Brent, hello Brent, nice talking to you the other day. Amanda, thank you very much. Amanda, we haven't yet spoken, but we soon will. Anjum and her husband Paul, Anjum and Paul, hello to you both. Arnie, hello Arnie. Brian S, there's two Brians, so there's Brian S, hello Brian. Thad, how are you? Hello Thad. Kelly, so there's Brian B and Brian S. Hello Kelly and Brian, how are you both? I can't read my own writing here. Maurice, hello Maurice. Where's me specs? Jonathan, thank you very much to you. Kemi, of course, hello Kemi. We've just we've cancelled your appointment, moved it further along in December. And Jan, thanks to you all. It's much appreciated. I love you being there. That's everyone who signed up in December. Thanks to all of you. I so much appreciate your presence here, and I'm sure we'll do some great work with our little pen, our little paper, and we'll be learning French in the traditional way, the way that still works. So let's get to this video now. By the way, this video is dedicated to you all. I wanted to say that also. This very special video is dedicated to you all. A language to shape our view. The video is really starting now. The difference between English and French. I will start with a language to shape our view. They say that language shapes our view. According to the structure of our language, our view of the world supposedly changes. That's at least what they say. Until recently, I never quite understood this concept. Despite being a native speaker of two languages, I couldn't quite understand how the grammatical structure of English supposedly influenced our being. For this to be verified, we would have to propose a description of the personality of English and relate it to the average personality of native speakers of English. It's very hard to link the two. Could there be a common trait to all English speakers that's shaped by their world experience because of the language? It's not easy to say yes or no to that. Because it's a very unscientific question. This whole question of language shaping our view of the world, our experience in the world, is very, very hard to have a scientific approach to prove this either way. There would also be several variables that contribute to the personality of a language. Vocabulary, sentence structure, but also intonation and rhythm. If we were to give human qualities to a language, the fact that English makes a selection, for example, English makes a selection between the words it chooses to turn up the volume on, could indicate several things. And by this I mean, if I were to say a piece of paper's on the table, well, I'm turning up the volume on certain chosen words, because these are the codes of English. Piece of paper on the table, piece, paper, table. So that's the hierarchy of the message. We've turned up the volume. We've not turned up the volume on the. It's not the piece of paper, it's on the table. So the and on, the volume has been turned down on those words, but we turn up the volume on piece of paper on the table. Piece of paper's on the table. What the person hears is paper, table. That's the hierarchy. That's the most important part of the message. This is how English works. But what does this indicate? What does it say about English if it had human qualities? What does it say about the people who use this language? Well, speaking in such a way could indicate that speakers of English are very concise. But it could also indicate that they are pragmatic, or they're fearful of misunderstandings, or they don't bother with details, or they just focus on the larger picture, or they're very polite because they sort of pre-filter the message before saying it to someone. And what that means is if I say piece of paper's on the table, I'm sort of pre-filtering the message. I'm making it easier for the person to understand by not throwing too many words at them, and just the important words. Turn up the volume on the important words. Paper's on the table, paper, table. I don't mean to say on very loud. I don't need to say the very loud. I'm not saying the piece of paper's on the table. You don't need all this information. I'm just pre-filtering the message for you. But what does this say about the English language? What does this say about the speakers of English? Does it say anything at all? This is what I'd like to investigate in this video. Also, the English language has words like safe, waving, cuddling, that the French language does not. It's true, there's no French word to say wave. There's no French word to say cuddling. In English, everything always has to be safe. Have you noticed that? Is the city safe at night? Is the street safe? Oh, that ladder doesn't look safe. We're always talking about safe things. Why is that? And what does it say about native speakers of English? There's no such word in French. You don't talk about the ladder being safe. Well, you might say it's dangerous, but you're not talking about it being safe. So does it say anything about the psychological priorities of those native speakers of English? Does it say anything about the people, the English-speaking people, native speakers of English? Why do speakers of English have a need to use the verb creeping? The cat is creeping along. There's no such word in French. Why is there that necessity? Why do we need to distinguish between chuckle, giggle and snicker? Why are there three words to sort of say chuckle, snigger even? There's a fourth one, chuckle, giggle, snicker, snigger. There's four of them. Am I making up a word? I think it's a word, snigger. I have pictures of Beano comic, you Brits all know what I'm talking about. Beano, Dandy, Buster and all that, Whizzer and Chips. Yeah, snigger. Anyway, four words to say the same thing, plus this laugh and all that. So why do things in English, especially for the Brits, always have to be nice? Oh, that's nice, isn't it? Oh, a nice cup of tea. Oh, that's nice. Oh, you look at someone's interior. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Everything always has to be nice. Why? What does it say about native speakers of English? Why is swearing looked down upon, in the UK at least, not so much in America? Why is swearing looked down upon in English, but not so much in French? It's all right to swear in French, but not so much in English. I always say swearers, speakers of English are divided into two camps, those that swear, those that never swear. I've known people in the UK, people who never swear. The codes are different in America, obviously. But if you're from the UK, you'll know. You know people who've never sworn. You've never heard them swear. What does it say about the people? Now, compared to French, English produces more Rounded sounds also, that's another variable. The pitch goes up and down when we speak. It's like a melody. So could speakers of English be warmer people than the colder, more monotone and sharper French? Is English better designed to express emotions? I always say to my students, sharpen your sounds in French. If you have, like between the A of apple, apple is quite rounded, apple, the mouth is always rounded. But apple, it's sharper, le I. If you compare the E of ski, I ski, it's sort of round, ski. Le ski. It's a lot sharper. Does it say anything at all about speakers of English versus speakers of French? In terms of their personality, in terms of their psychology, does it indicate anything at all? In all these considerations, there seems to be some plausibility, while at the same time being very hard to justify with certainty. Part of the difficulty in getting to the bottom of the question is, well, who do we study? And how do we study them? Do we take all the bilingual native speakers of English in a group and ask them about their feelings regarding their second native language? You'd have to find native speakers of English who also have a second native language and ask them to compare their feelings between two languages. Do we go by statistics? When we collect all the answers, do we observe the level of socialization in one language than in the other? How do they socialize in one language and then in the other? When would we do this? How would we do this? And with whom? How do you choose your study group of human beings? It's not an easy thing to do at all in a scientific way if we want to study this. And yet there's something to it, in my view, because until recently, I never paid much attention to all of this. I thought it was an overly idealized view of languages. You know, language shapes your view and your world experience. How could it shape anyone's world, I ask myself. But the more I think about it, the more I believe there's something to be explored in this. For example, when I speak French on the phone, my wife tells me that my personality, my facial expression and my tone changes completely. I'm no longer the same person in her eyes when I'm on the phone in French. And it's as if I was becoming a speaker of French and acted in this way. I act in the manner of a speaker of French. And she says I look more severe and less warm, less kind. It's funny. It's another story I'd like to share. One day we were watching the NBA and my family told me there was a French player playing on one of the teams. And I said, don't tell me, I want to see if I can guess who it is. And I started to look at the screen. I was guessing who the French player was, and it turns out I got it right first try. And his name is Gobert, and I could see he was French. Just by his face, I could see he was French. How did I do it? His eyes. It was all in his eyes. I could tell he was thinking French things. It's funny. I saw his face, I saw his eyes, I said, he's the French one. To me, he was thinking French things. His eyes indicated that. And I think the speakers of English have a more lateral vision. You know, it's more, I don't know, I can't do it. It's sort of all over, you know, lateral. And the French speaker was, qu'est-ce que c'est? I could just tell. Gobert, he looked like a French speaker to me. This player seemed to have a more analytical gaze. And this brings us, I believe, to a major trait of the English language as opposed to French. We automatically, when we speak English, we automatically involve our emotion and our person into every message we speak. We involve our emotion, we involve our person when we speak English. So this means that when two speakers of English interact, they're feeling each other. They're feeling how the other person feels about the message. It's very subtle, it's very complex, and there's a lot of perception involved. French doesn't do that, not at all. And it's rather more what you say, not how you say it. And to me, that's a big difference, the first big difference between English and French. English is all about how you say things. You know, you're subconsciously thinking, you're delivering a message, but you're also paying attention to how you deliver it. You're paying attention to that, how you deliver it, and how the person is going to receive the message. You want it to be harmonious. You want to produce a certain effect on the person listening to the message. I can tell you that French doesn't have even a a fraction of those tools. It's not that type of language. French doesn't do that. You don't mix your personality with the message, or your feeling, or call it what you will. In every English conversation, the speakers are delivering the verbal message according to very subtle rules and paying attention to how they want the message to be understood. And the little variations in tone say a lot about how the speaker positions themselves in regards to the message. There are infinite tools, I believe, to shape our sentence in a certain way when we speak English. We are as much listening to the contents of the sentence as to how it is said. And I have an example. When I thanked Lewis the other day, or should I call you Ivor, we had a long conversation. You're in Thailand at the moment, aren't you? And you told me you watch these videos almost religiously, which I took as a compliment, I must say. And what was happening during the whole conversation, I was feeling Ivor, I was feeling Lewis. I had him on the phone, we were on WhatsApp yesterday, and I was developing an impression of him as a person. I was feeling his message as well as listening to it. That's what you do in English. You feel people. It's hard to describe. If you speak English as a native, you probably know what I mean. And I don't do that in French. And I don't think there's a way to do it in French, but I'll get to this. When I speak French, as a native, because I'm a native speaker of French also, and when I speak with other natives, I notice that I can't penetrate into the core being of the person. I can't access their being. That's the best way I can describe it. When you speak French, you can't access the core being of the person. You don't have access to their core, if you will, as I did with when I spoke to Lewis yesterday. One probable reason is that the way French is meant to be spoken is with a tone that excludes any sort of emotional personality. The proper way of speaking French, by default, automatically, if you want to follow the rules, excludes emotion. And I think I have an example. I'm going to ad lib here. Typically, an English-speaking person, when they speak French, puts too much emotion into their French. You can meet up with friends in English and say, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you. Wow. Oh, it's been so long. Oh, wow, we should do this more often. Oh, yes. Oh, what lovely flowers you have. Do you sew them yourself? Oh." A typical English way of speaking. You can't say that in French. You go, "Je suis tellement content de vous voir. Oh, mais c'est beau. Ah." It doesn't sound right. It's not that type of thing. You're not meant to include so much feeling into your French. It's not designed for it. It's just not designed for it. So French, the way it's meant to be spoken, is with a tone that excludes any sort of emotion or personality compared to English. I'm not saying that there's no personality, but compared to English, there's infinitely less, infinitely. And even face to face, I leave the conversation not knowing about the person. That's fascinating, because less than a year ago, I went back to my old university, French-speaking university in Brussels, and I spoke to several people there, and I was, I'm more and more, I'm in the Anglosphere, the English-speaking environment, and I leave the conversation, this is hard. I spoke to them, I don't know them as people. I can't penetrate them as people. I have no impression either way. And it's almost as if French was on a level of formality that's so high that you can't access the person because of the language. There's a language between them and yourself. That's the best way I can describe it. So even face to face, I leave the conversation not knowing about the person. Yeah. And it's as if the message they were telling me was like a wall between me and them. It's true. So it's like when you speak French, to me, it's like this. You're standing here, the other person's there, and you have access to this, but you can't see behind the message. You see? You can't see behind the message, and that's French. So there's like a wall between two speakers in who speak French. Now the question is, why didn't I notice this earlier, and why aren't more native speakers of French raising this issue? Why aren't all the native speakers of French complaining, raising the issue and saying, "Oh, I find it hard to connect with people, I'm sick of this language"? Well, it's very complex. Well, because I think, because it becomes your normal. If you speak French as a native speaker of French, you don't know any different. It's your normal. And it will take an understanding of English as a native speaker of English. It will take an understanding of English as a native to know that another way of communicating is possible. So until you've experienced this, you wouldn't know, would you? You just speak French. To you, it's your normal. You don't know that something else is possible. That's at least what I think. Another point of interest when we speak of French is the presence of vous, the formal way of addressing people, vous, which acts as a sort of third person in the conversation and prevents speakers from connecting. That's at least what I think. It's like a third person in the conversation. So almost as if speaking to a person's title instead of to the person. You're speaking to their title. It's a bit like saying, how is the king today? Is the king enjoying their day? You know, you're not speaking to the king, you're speaking to the title of king. How's the king? How's His Majesty today? Is His Majesty enjoying his day or something? It's very odd, and that's the effect that vous creates when you speak to someone in French. But could these two traits of French say something of how a language shapes the view of the world of its native speakers? Does it say anything at all about the life experience of native speakers of French? It would seem to make sense, I believe. It would seem to make sense. Even in the slightest words, the smallest words, speakers of English are attuned to details and voice modulations. The way of saying hello in person or on the telephone tells us something about the other person. It's not the hello, it's how you say hello. French doesn't have that. There's not a million ways to say hello in French. To make matters worse, a lot of French people will give you sort of a very artificial bonjour. I'm trying to picture myself. I need to become French for a second. Bonjour. Bonjour. What does it mean? What I mean is, what are you saying really? Because I heard the word bonjour. Bonjour. It means, I know. To me, it sounds like go away, please. Say bonjour. It's very cold. It's very formal. It's very rehearsed. It's very bonjour. Bonjour. It's it's not a warm hello. Well, I have to switch back to English now, but it's different codes. So saying hello in person or on the telephone in English says something about the mood of the person. When someone says hello to you, you have more information accessible to you than just the word hello. It's not just the information. They're not just saying hello, they're saying something else also. The equivalent information isn't available to a speaker of French who only has the contents of the message to go by. In French, it's all about the contents of the message. You don't have much else. And after all, there isn't a variety of ways of saying bonjour. We just say it. We don't style it. You don't style your bonjour. You just say bonjour. You see, in English, it's all about how you say things. Another large trait of the French language, and now we're getting to the core of it. We're getting to the interesting stuff. Another large trait of the French language is the sizable presence of reflexive verbs compared to English. It's a massive part of the program, reflexive verbs in French. Why is that? Why the need to specify who is doing the action? Why must we say they are fighting each other instead of saying they are fighting? Why do we have to make clear that they're fighting each other? Ils se battent. They're fighting each other. Why do we have the need to say this? Why say he is sitting himself down? Il s'assied, or il s'assoit, there's two conjugations. Why do we have to specify that it's himself he's sitting down and not someone else? Il s'assied, he's sitting himself down. Why is that? Why say, I am hiding myself? Like, je me cache, I'm hiding myself. Or, I am having myself some fun. Je m'amuse, I'm having myself some fun, I'm hiding myself. Why do we not automatically assume that the message is about the subject in French? Why don't we automatically assume that it's evident that you're hiding yourself? You don't need to specify that. The sentence is about you, is it not? But no, it's not so easy in French. There's not that automatic assumption that the sentence is about you. And that's what I'm trying to get through in this video. It's a big difference with English. Massive. We'll get to it. So to recap, we have to say in French they are fighting each other. We don't automatically assume, they are fighting is the subject is doing something. Your attention is on who are they fighting? Oh, each other. Okay. In English, you don't need to say that. They're fighting. Well, we're not thinking ahead and say, well, who are they fighting? Well, it's evident they're fighting each other, are they not? Yeah, they're fighting. That's what it means. Like sitting himself down, or il s'assied, I'm hiding myself. Who else are you hiding? In French, you have to say it. Yeah. An answer to reflexive verbs. Now let's look into these French reflexive verbs and try to find answers as to why this could be and what it says about the French language. French reflexive verbs could very well offer an explanation to the biggest psychological difference between English and French. I do believe that French reflexive verbs hold an answer. Not the answer, but an answer. They hold an answer to a big psychological difference between English and French, and in this might illustrate how a language influences our view of the world. That's at least what I believe. Take I was hiding as an example. The sentence I was hiding. The sentence requires no explanation, whereas je cachais, the equivalent in French, je cachais, does require an explanation. A French speaker wants to know what I was hiding. Je cachais, but what were you hiding? They don't consider by default that the sentence is about me. They don't consider this by default, that the sentence is about me. Now, naturally, we could argue to the contrary, and we could say that the misunderstanding in French is rather due to the sentence being incorrect. We could say, yeah, but it has nothing to do with what you think, Chris. It's rather because saying je cachais is unusual in French, and that's what caused a misunderstanding. Maybe. Maybe, I'll accept that. But I also think it's only partly true. This explanation is only, this rebuttal is only partly true. Because any native speaker listening to me now, si vous avez le français comme langue native, et si vous m'écoutez maintenant, vous savez très bien que vous vous posez la question en ce moment, quand on dit je cachais, vous posez instinctivement la question, mais il cachait quoi? So, votre attention part vers le quoi, qui subit l'action, à qui fait-il l'action? And this is a big difference between French and English. What I just said in French is that they're looking ahead. They're wondering, he was hiding what? Je cachais. Like there's this automatic question that triggers in their minds. Je cachais, he was hiding what? You know, it's like an automatic curiosity. You're wondering, what was it? Je cachais what? In English, you're not wondering about this. I was hiding. You never for 1 second asked yourself, what was he hiding? You automatically assume that it was I that I was hiding. It was myself I was hiding. A native speaker of French, listening to me now, when I said je cachais, automatically wondered what I was hiding. I'm sure of it. They were not confused about the sentence je cachais. It's not a matter of confusion. It's a matter of curiosity. They were curious as to what entity the verb hiding was acting on. They understood je cachais, I was hiding. What was it? What entity, what thing is the verb hiding acting on? That was the real point of interest of a native speaker of French. What was being hid? I should have said what was being hidden. Pardon my grammar. That's colloquial. What was being hid? It's like I was sat here. I was stood there in the rain. So what was being hidden, sorry. Revise your grammar, Chris. You're supposed to be a teacher. They understood what je cachais meant. But they were also wondering what was being hidden. So they were not, this is very important to me, they were not, French speakers were not seeing I as the doer of the action. They were not focusing on I, they were not focusing on je. They were focusing elsewhere on the receiver of the action. And this is the point I'm trying to develop, the big difference between English and French. They were focusing on the receiver of the action in their mind's eye. Second example, using a relatively rare verb such as raser, which could mean trimming or shaving, if I were to tell someone, je vais aller raser, if I said that to someone, they would be confused and even wonder what I was going to trim. If I said je vais raser, what is he going to trim? He's going to trim, shave, or trim what? Now, partly because the sentence was unusual, but partly also because their minds would wonder what I was going to trim or shave. So it is unusual to say je vais raser, je vais aller raser. But there's a curiosity. The French speaker is wondering what the verb is acting upon. You see? That's the focus of the attention. It's the focus of attention when you speak French as a native speaker. Je vais aller raser. What is he going to shave? What is he going to trim? They're not thinking, well, of course it's himself he's going to shave. It's not where the attention is, you see? we have to say je vais me raser, which is the proper way of saying it, to make sure we know whose beard we're going to shave. You really have to say it. I'm going to shave my own beard in case there was any element of doubt. Je vais me raser, je vais aller me raser. The focus of the French language is on who is receiving the action, and that's my theory, and that's what I believe. I'm not saying I can prove it, but that's what I strongly believe as a native speaker of both languages, that the focus in French is rather on who's receiving the action, what's happening, what is the verb acting upon. Shaving, yes, but what, right? These two small examples seem to indicate a tendency, or so I believe, that in French, to not consider by default that je is the point of interest of the sentence, but rather what or who the verb is acting upon. So I'll repeat that. These two small examples seem to indicate a tendency in French to not consider by default that je, the doer of the action, is the main point of interest. Their attention is not on je, it's rather more on the other part of the sentence. Their interest is on what or who the verb is acting upon. I believe that's the major difference between French and English, among other differences, of course. As a native speaker of both these languages, I can compare the effect that SVO sentences have on my mental picture. What I mean is SVO, subject, verb, object. If I say the same SVO sentence, subject, object, verb, object, sorry, I'm walking the dog, I subject, verb, walking, object, the dog, I can compare the mental picture I have as a native speaker of both these languages, English and French, and I can see that my mental picture is radically different in both those languages. In English, we picture the subject. I'm sure of it because I've tested this on people I know here in America who are native speakers of English, and I asked them, what do you see when you see these sentences? And it's always the subject. And in French, I would say we picture the object. We focus on the object. That's what I believe. Let's look at a few examples. The boy broke the window. Well, what do you picture? You're a native speaker of English. What do you picture? The boy broke the window. What do you see in your mind's eye? Do you see the boy or do you see the window? I believe that native speakers of English usually see a boy with a football or something. They don't see the window. The boy broke the window, you're seeing the boy, you're imagining a boy, you're not seeing a window. I don't believe so. The cat caught the mouse. What do you see? Are you seeing the cat or the mouse? To everyone I've asked, they all see the cat. They all see the cat, not the mouse. And I can guarantee that speakers of French see the mouse rather than the cat. Because when I say it in French, le chat attrape la souris, I'm seeing la souris. Le chat attrape la souris, I'm seeing the paws on the mouse. I'm seeing that mouse. Le garçon a cassé la fenêtre. The boy broke the window. I'm seeing the fenêtre cassée. I'm seeing that broken window. Et si vous êtes locuteur natif de français, je vous en prie, laissez un commentaire en anglais, en français. J'ai l'impression que c'est vrai. J'ai l'impression que vous voyez aussi la fenêtre cassée. J'ai l'impression que vous voyez la souris plutôt que le chat. Troisième exemple, third example. I clean the kitchen. If someone tells me I clean the kitchen, what do I see? I see a person doing an action. I see I, and I'm not seeing the kitchen. Someone tells you I clean the kitchen, you see what? You see I doing an action, a person, the subject of the sentence. So my question to you is, well, do you see the kitchen or do you see the person? And I think that if you're a native speaker of English, you rather see the person than the kitchen. J'ai nettoyé la cuisine, I'm thinking of la cuisine. I'm not thinking of je, I'm thinking of la cuisine. J'ai nettoyé la cuisine. I think that the biggest difference between English and French could well be our point of interest towards specific parts of the sentence. I think it's the major difference. Where's your interest? On which part of the sentence are you focusing if you speak English or if you speak French as a native? I would argue that English is a more I-based language. You know, a capital I, interesting. It's all about I, what I'm doing. I think English is very interested in what I is doing. French is a more what is happening to the object type of language. You know, I clean the kitchen. What is happening to the kitchen? You know, we're wondering about the kitchen, not about I. This feature, I think, is noticed when we analyze sentences and ask ourselves what we see mentally and where we place the focus regarding the information. It's interesting. You'd have to have native speakers of English and French to be able to compare. But we can all do the test for ourselves and ask ourselves, well, in these SVO sentences, subject, verb, object, what do I rather see? Like the singer broke the microphone, what do you see? Do you see a microphone or do you see a singer? I see a singer, and everyone I ask sees a singer. You don't see the broken microphone, you see the singer. And I think this is where the major difference between French and English lies. Let's now talk about English and French in love and poems. If my theories are true, French communication can have quite big impacts on the way native speakers of French perceive messages and relate to them, of course. If it's true, it would have quite a big impact. Like for myself, strictly for myself, the sentence je t'aime doesn't mean anything because it doesn't hit home. It's not a magical formula that means love to me. To me, when I hear je t'aime, it's funny, it doesn't mean anything. I just see the verb aimer, je t'aime. I hear aime, which means to like or to love. To me, it's a very cold verb. It doesn't mean passion. It doesn't mean je t'aime, okay, aime, right. It doesn't mean anything. It's funny. So I'm just seeing the action of liking, but when I hear I love you, I'm seeing I doing the action of loving. It's a much more powerful sentence. It's a powerful sentence. I'm seeing I doing the action of loving. It's a very powerful statement compared to je t'aime. Now my question is this also what French native speakers are experiencing without knowing it? Could it be that native speakers of French are experiencing this without knowing it? Well, you know, how could they know if they don't speak English as native speakers? It's what I mentioned a second ago. If you can't know that something else is possible if you can't experience it, obviously. So maybe they're missing out on something. Would be dreadful. So could it be that they're missing out on the feeling of experiencing the I as we do in English? It's very hard to say because it's their normal. Maybe they'll never know what it's like to I love you, like je t'aime. I think it's a bit cold personally. So whatever the answer is, I made a surprising discovery. I did. In the French poem Nouveau Venu qui cherche Rome en Rome by the poet Joachim du Bellay. It's a little hobby of mine. I take French poems, I call it necrofolk. I do it also with English poets, but I put them to music, so I like to use poems from the Middle Ages, you know, 1400s or even earlier, 1400s, 1700s. I don't like the 19th century that much in poetry, but that time slot, I like that. I like to put them to music. In this poem, Joachim du Bellay is a French poet. He's speaking about visitors in Rome who are disappointed to not find the past glory of the antiquity. And as much as I read the poem, and I sang the poem, and I liked the poem, when I read it in French, all I saw was Rome. It's very interesting. In my mind's eye, when I read the poem, I saw Rome. He was speaking about the city of Rome, right? I didn't see the person walking through Rome disappointed, which was the whole idea of the poem. He's saying all these people come to Rome looking for the antiquity and the past glories of our civilization. They're not finding it. All they're seeing is ruins and things. I completely missed the point of the poem, or at least the message was not powerful enough because of the structure of the French language. That's my discovery, that's my epiphany, if you will. So I didn't see the person walking through Rome disappointed as he was trying to get through in this poem. I saw the temples, I saw the monuments, but not the hero of the story. I wasn't seeing the hero of the story, isn't it funny? I wasn't seeing the human being experiencing the visit of Rome, which was, as I said, the whole point of the poem. Completely by accident, however, I fell upon the translation of this poem into English by Ezra Pound. And the mental picture I developed was radically different. It's fascinating. The same poem translated by Ezra Pound into English. And it goes something like this, the two first lines: O thou newcomer, who seekest Rome in Rome, and findest in Rome no thing thou canst call Roman. Is it not clear? Is it not clear that it's addressed to the person instead of the city? O thou newcomer, I'm speaking to you, newcomer. O thou newcomer, who seekest Rome in Rome, and findest in Rome no thing thou canst call Roman. And all of a sudden I said, oh, it's quite clear that it's about a person. Of course it's about a person. It's about a person who can't find Rome in Rome. I didn't see it in French. Now, in this moment, I realized that I had made up the wrong mental picture of the original French version. The pictures it made in my mind were the wrong ones. Now, English, because at least I believe that's what I posit here, because English is naturally focused on the I, it's all about what the human is experiencing. That's where the focus is. What the human is experiencing as opposed to the latter part of the sentence. And it's almost as if reading English automatically places the attention on the left side, the left-hand side of the sentence, while French places it on the right-hand side of the sentence. If you have subject to verb, object, your sentence, cut it in half. English is looking at I. What are you doing? What's the subject doing? And French, at least I believe, is looking at what is happening to the object. So to conclude on this idea, it's quite evident that there lacks a reliable methodology to prove the veracity of what I'm sharing. It's almost impossible to prove. It would take several native speakers of English and French at the same level of bilingualism between them and compare their understanding of the same message. I mean, how do you even find 10 people who have French and English at the same level of bilingualism, native speakers, 10 of them, okay, read these texts, what do you think, do a study group. It's very hard to organize. And even though we would still be in the realm of the subjective and no definite proof would be brought to answer the question, it's almost impossible to prove. So the best I can do is to share my impression as a native speaker of both these languages, and I would love it. Anyone else who, even if you just have one language as a native speaker, tell me, what do you see in these types of sentences? And if you speak French, and if you have two native languages, is there a difference? Do you see different things according to the same sentence? If you speak Polish, if you speak anything, Russian, Tagalog, any language, is the mental picture you develop different according to the language you speak? To conclude, if there was a conclusion to these considerations, I would say that English is a more emotional language that includes our being in the shaping of each message. I think English is more emotional, and you do by default include your being in the message, more so than in French, much more than in French. We style the message according to how we feel about it and according to how we want others to feel about it. You style your message, you want to produce a certain effect. We're always doing that in English. We do this instinctively as speakers of English, and in this trait, there may be a glimpse into the psyche of English speakers. It could say something about the psyche of English speakers. I don't know. The way of styling the message, what does it say? I don't know. In contrast, French doesn't have even a fraction of the tools to do this. And besides, it's not the makeup of this language, nor of its purpose. It's not the purpose of French to do this. The message in French is the sum total of the words contained in the sentence. That's the message. It starts here, it ends there, that's the message. There's very little subtext. Subtext that we have in films. English is all about the subtext. English is the subtext. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. French doesn't have that. There's very little subtext. That's at least what I believe. I would also defend the view that English has a different interest in the actors of the sentence, the acting parts of the sentence. It's all about who is doing the action as opposed to what is being done to something. I clean the kitchen, I'm interested in I, not what's happening to the kitchen. Right, that's what I think about English. In The Cat Caught the Mouse, we see the cat. In Le Chat a attrapé la souris, a French speaker rather sees the mouse. I think we focus on different things according to those two languages, but some will say that this isn't exactly true. There may be, of course, a middle ground, there may be exceptions, and levels of complexity to be brought to this question. Of course, it's not as simple as I propose it to be. There's levels of complexity to this. Undeniably, I think we can say that English pre-filters the message by use of volume and sound modulation. Remember the example, papers on the table, you pre-filter the message. Paper table, those are the words I hear louder than the others. So there's almost like a preparation of the message to make it easier for the other person to receive the message. French doesn't go through the same trouble. The person is much less involved in the message. And I think these are objective facts about those two languages. You can't say no. You can't say no, it's not true. English does that. If you say, where's the book? The book's on the shelf. The book's on the shelf, you hear bookshelf. Same sentence in French, le livre est sur l'étagère. You include so many more sounds, you know, le livre est sur l'étagère, ta 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 ta, you know, do your own filtering sort of thing, you know, do your own processing. So in English we pre-process the message. Books on the shelf, you hear bookshelf. You don't need to be all confused by all these unnecessary sounds. English does that. And that was my article, which you can find on wecommunicate.com. And that's where I think the big difference between English and French lies. I would be honoured, I would be very happy if anyone commented on this and told me their thoughts. I'll end on an anecdote. It's funny because I studied in Brussels at university, and a lot of these lectures were in English, but because these professors are not native speakers of English, I noticed that 2 or 3 years in, it took me a while to, I said, it's funny because I don't remember anything about the lectures in English, and it's my native language. Why don't I remember anything about the lectures? So what I mean is there's no sound that I could recall. I can recall conversations I've had with people, you know, sentences that resonate in my mind. I can say, oh yeah, they said it this way, you know, sentences that resonate with me. And I watched hours, hundreds of hours worth of lectures in English. I could never remember a word of them. Not one word. I think, well, why is that? But then I understood, because English sort of does like this, you know, these are words, and you sort of pre-filter the words and it moves towards you like this. But French does like this, it's flat. You know, all the words come at you at the same time. They hit you at the same time. But English, it's more like this. Different words, different volumes. And of course the modulation of the sentence. But all these teachers couldn't do that. So I was receiving all this information in English in a French type of way, like a big, you know, like, I don't know, a big bulldozer moving towards me, and I couldn't filter the message. I had to do double the work, is what I worked out. I had to filter an unfiltered English message, but it was twice as hard for me as it was for the other kids who didn't have English as a native language. To them it was all the same. But to me it was really hard because I wasn't used to processing English in that way. You see? Anyway, it's a long video. I'll stop talking and, thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to your comments. That's where I believe the major difference between English and French lies. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chris from We Communicate. Au revoir. Goodbye. Thanks a lot.